Well, Lee McQueen, the 2008 winner of The Apprentice. I remember cheering him on when he won The Apprentice on account of the fact that he was showing the recruitment industry in such a good light. And we discuss on this podcast his apprentice experience, the business he set up with Lord Sugar and his son, and also the two other businesses that he set up since. So the Raw Talent Academy, and more recently, Phoenix 51 in the SaaS space. And this is a fascinating discussion. Lee's so high energy. He's incredibly open and authentic, which I really appreciated. And we discuss everything from the depth of the CV that we want to see and how we need to be thinking about hiring differently in order to make best decisions for both parties. That's the crux of this. But we go deeper too. We talk about the pros and cons of business ownership, the fact that when COVID hit, 90% of his business was decimated. It's a really interesting story, packed full of great insights. And I really hope you enjoyed the discussion today. So without further ado, let's get going and let's get to work.
You're listening to the Career Jump Podcast. Insights, interviews, and success stories to inspire and give you the edge when you make your next career jump. Hosted by your career concierge, Andrew MacAskill.
Hi, welcome back to the Executive Career Jump podcast. I'm your host and career concierge, Andrew MacAskill, and delighted today to be joined by Lee McQueen. How are we doing, Lee?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Andrew. Honoured to be on. Can't wait to get into some of the riveting topics that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, very, very pertinent topics. And obviously, Lee's very well known as being a previous Apprentice winner, but I'm particularly interested to dive into some of the areas that you've been doing since then, obviously with your Raw Talent Academy and your work with Phoenix. So tell us a little bit about post-apprentice life and your career over the last decade or so.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I suppose it probably goes back to, the right at the beginning in terms of 21 years of recruitment. So you have been in the industry. I know some people obviously saying, oh, right, 21 years, you don't look like that.
Impossible.
I started early. No, I mean, 21 years now in recruitment, spanning a huge stint at Capita. So I cut my teeth at Hayes, actually, and then went and worked for a couple of smaller boutique recruitment businesses and ended up at Capita for a long period of time in two stints. I built a business IT resourcing at the time, kind of a low volume, high margin type, traditional IT recruitment type business. Turned over 32 million quid and a decent sized business, £2 million business. Then, as you said, I won on The Apprentice, ended up beating 20,000 candidates to get on, which was mind blowing in its sense for me anyway. And then ended up 12 weeks out, ended up winning. So I won The Apprentice back in 2008. Don't get to talk about it that much now because obviously it's a long time ago, but a huge pivot in my career, because if it wasn't for The Apprentice, generally, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to start my own business up, which is what I did. So I worked for just over 2 years. I built a business with Lord Sugar and his son Simon called Amscreen, which is a digital media business, a global business now. It was a media advertising business that focused primarily at the time on petrol station market, which seems a bit weird, but we signed a contract for BP within 7 months of setting the company up. And then Esso, Shell, Total, all the big major petrol stations kind of fell into shape, and it gave us that kind of foundation to sell digital advertising, essentially. That's what it was. So really good, but my passion is people, my passion is recruitment, my passion is technology and recruitment. So 10 years ago, I set up a company called Raw Talent. And it was really, Andrew, to disrupt, for want of a better expression, but it was to disrupt the market a bit. I used in my previous world in Capita as a business leader, I used some of the graduate emerging talent companies, one being the market leader, Pareto Law. And I loved it. I absolutely loved the concept. I loved what they did and so on and so forth. But I felt that they could do something slightly different or change it in the basis that the talent pool that they were after was graduates only. And I could never get my head around, whilst you're looking for maybe a doctor or, a qualified physician or, whatever it might be, you have to have a degree. I get that. But for sales positions or sales opportunities, you just really do not need to have somebody have a degree. What you really need is somebody with the right attitude, the right behaviors and the right competencies. So I set up a business that focused specifically on that and sort of said to the world, if you like, we don't mind if you've got a degree or not. It doesn't really matter to us. What we want is you. We want to hire you, the attitude, the behavior, the desire, all the kind of, I don't know, the grit and the determination, yes, but actually let's map out what your core values are in your business and let's match them core values with people with their core values, and actually let's get a better result as an end of that. And cutting things down like year one attrition or churn, as the case may be, was one of our key things, and we've done that really well over the last kind of, I suppose, 10 years. At the back of that, about 3 years, maybe 4 years ago now, we decided to go out to market and find a piece of technology that would digitalize that process for us. It was all assessment process. So it was observational assessment, watching, looking, learning, just like the Apprentice, to be fair. So you'll never get rocket science from me, Andrew, to be honest. But that's I looked at that Apprentice experience and said, wow, what a fantastic way to recruit. We didn't invent people assessment. It's been around for years and years, but what we did is we modernized it. We took it to a different level. And so we digitalized it, but there was nothing else out on the market at the time that enabled us to get what we wanted. So brilliantly or stupidly, I suppose only time will tell, I spent a load of money on developing our own internal platform. And about a year later, one of our biggest global clients actually said, would you sell this to us direct? So we ended up selling the platform direct, extracting it out of the raw talent business and creating, as of last year, a new SaaS company called Phoenix 51, which is a business that focuses directly on digitalizing and virtualizing the people assessment process. And that's essentially what the two businesses now do.
I love that origin story. So many of the best SaaS businesses were kind of born out of different businesses. If you look at Slack and various others, they started off as a gaming company, I think, Slack. It's incredible how these things emerge, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, we've done so much learning and reading over the last kind of, probably more than a year, 18 months, 2 years, but certainly the last year since we've officially launched Phoenix 51. And you're right, it came through a frustration. We couldn't get what we wanted to do. I mean, we're just talking off air before, it's so frustrating, the amount of organizations, not only in the UK, but globally, that still use a gut feel to hire, or still use a pen and paper, or what's your default button? Oh, I'm hiring you, Andrew. What's the first thing you say? Oh yeah, send me your CV. I mean, it's just crazy, in my opinion, that we hire off a piece of paper. And what we want to be able to do is we want to get to know you. We want to be able to see what you're good at, what you're not so good at. We want to know your strengths. Of course we do. But we also want to know your weaknesses. We want to know areas where you can develop. And no one's perfect unless, your audience. I'm sure there's a few people in your viewers and listeners that are perfect, of course. Well, I'm clearly not one of them, right? So I don't think anyone's perfect. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for learning. So what better way to hire somebody which is against the core values and competencies of your business, and the two match, but then to understand what their weaknesses are or their skills gaps are, so we can develop them and we can keep them in our business, rather than them saying, oh, do you know what? Thanks for your time now, Lee, but I'm going to go to one of your major competitors now. You've developed me. And that for me doesn't fit right. So I think that technology has a huge part to play in that, but actually our way of thinking, of transforming the way that we think as leaders, also has a big part to play in that as well.
Oh, it's lazy, isn't it? Matching a CV to a JD rather than a person to an environment is lazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is that. I mean, I think that there will be some people that will say, I've been recruiting for 25 years or 30 years. I know what I'm doing. And there's be some people that have some fantastic hit rates. And that's brilliant. But ultimately, if you think about what they're doing, they're probably looking at the values and culture of their business, knowing what the type of individual that they need, and then interviewing against that or assessing against that. But they might be doing that in a manual way. And that's great, but that's not scalable, right? Because there's only one person doing it. But if you've got a big team of people that you want all of them to look at that process, imagine, put it like this, imagine you've been hiring somebody, or you've been hiring for 25 years, and you know exactly the types of people and you've never had anyone leave. It's not a rinse and repeat. It's a perfect record. Say, I'm saying it's a bit of ingest, but say it is. How would you then get that out of your head, if you like, and put that into a process or a digital process that enables anybody to come into your business when you're growing your team, your talent acquisition team, whatever, to actually then run that same process? Because that's ultimately what we're talking about here. And that's what Phoenix 51 essentially does. Absolutely
love it. Yeah, well, I think the more you can make the assessment reflective of showing the behaviors that are required for the job, the better, right? Like, unless the job is going to be to do face-to-face interviews based around your CV, which not many jobs are, then you need to create an environment that's actually going to show people, allow people to show themselves in their ability to do the role, right? That's
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like I said before, I don't think, we haven't created assessment. Assessment's been around for years, and there's loads of phenomenal tools, lots of fantastic techniques to be able to use out there in the market. Of course there is. But actually, like you say, if you can try and recreate, it's a little bit like this. Going into a simulator, if you were an airline pilot, for example, you wouldn't hire an airline pilot based on a CV and go crack on. Go and fly the plane, would you? Yes, you'd say there's training and development there, but if he or she is coming into the business, I've just been flying for the last 10 years with, I don't know, one of the major airline companies, you would say British Airways or whatever it is, and they're coming to work for EasyJet. Would you just stick them in the plane, or would you put them in to make sure that they know what they're doing and understanding how that 737 works? So for me, it's the same principle. When I was on The Apprentice all them years ago, what Lord Sugar's doing, it is like a giant assessment centre. He's watching, he's looking, he's observing, he's seeing, has this individual got the right traits? Have they got the right behaviours? Have they got the right values for me? Put me into a difficult selling situation. Can I do it? Put me into a situation where I need to lead. Can I do it? Where are my faults? I already know my faults. He knows my faults, before he hires me. So he can then say, well, okay, let's develop them in these areas. And that's at any level, in my opinion, Andrew. It's not just at emerging talent. It works brilliantly for volume and emerging talent, that this process, but also at the executive level as well. I would probably bet, not much because I'm not a betting person, but I'll bet 50p, right? Let's put it that way. I bet 50p that most executives that are making that transition or in your audience at the moment will have a coach at some stage, because they want to learn, they want to develop. It's very, very important. So what better way to learn and develop if you already know where your skills gaps are?
100%. So when we see people go into these assessment centres from the candidate side, so people turning up to these assessment centres, what are the common mistakes you see people make on the day when they're attending them?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, we're going back years now, of course, of lots of different ones. I remember, not necessarily a mistake, which I'll come to in a second, but I think the common mistakes are people trying to fake it. That's the biggest mistake. People try and be someone who they're not. And again, let's be honest. Since social media happened, probably 2006, 2007, something like that, when it started really growing, and now it's obviously completely mad. It's so easy to try and be somebody else. It's so easy to try and conform to someone else. The problem with that, of course, and this is the problem with an hour and a half's interview and looking at a piece of paper, is you don't really get the full reflection of who that individual is. Now, a lot of people will say, well, yeah, but if we do an interview, it's really quick and we can get it done and we can get the job right. But probably 3, 4, 5 months down the line, you're going to be repeating that same process. So the common mistake most people make at assessment is trying to be someone that they're not, or trying to fake it out, should we say. That's indicative now, especially in the emerging talent market, because a lot of people are used to face tune or doing something different on social media, and all the blemishes have gone, and we live in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world, and we're not hiring a perfect candidate. We're hiring somebody that is brilliant for our business and that will excel in our business, and that's the difference. Do you see what I mean? So I would say that's probably one of the biggest mistakes. One mistake that ended up turning out to be a genius move, actually, was this. I won't name them because it's out of order, but there was a candidate that we had in one of our financial services academies that we ran, and he turned up with no socks on. Okay, so he had shoes but no socks on. It was a fashion thing. I mean, the guy looked amazing. Don't get me wrong, he looked great. But the client was like, hang on, it's a big, giant global financial services business. And they were like, the guy's got no socks on. We're like, yeah, but let's not judge him based on some socks, right? Let's judge him based on what he can do. Anyway, he went through the whole assessment process. He was absolutely superb. They hired him, and he's been brilliant for them. So there's a good thing. But there could have been a situation where he was turned away as a mistake for not wearing any socks, for example, Andrew. So I just think that sometimes we've got to approach things now with a much more open mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what's interesting as well, what I found from assessments when we were doing executive search and stuff, is there's really no point in faking it, because even if you are successful, which most likely you won't be because inauthenticity tends to come through, but even if you are successful and you pull the wool over your eyes, what you're doing is basically securing a role that's not suited to you.
Yeah, it's kind of counterproductive in all ways, isn't it? It's counterproductive for you. It's counterproductive for your end client, for example. It's counterproductive for the individual that's actually going for the job. So, like you say, I mean, there is an element of what's the point? There's no point in doing that. And I've always said that assessment is a two-way process. I think recruitment is a two-way process. There's so many people that think that recruitment is a one-way process. I want the candidates to come and work for my business, so therefore it's my process, and I'm not really worried about the candidates. But the reverse of that is, well, also, isn't it an interview process to see whether or not the candidate wants to work for that organization or wants to work with the company? And actually, from an assessment perspective, whether that's virtual, whether that's digital, traditional, physical, there is that two-way process whereby you get to know somebody else. And the very simplistic way I always look at stuff, always simplistic, the most simplistic way I look is people getting to know each other. Right? Is people getting to know each other? Are they the right? Like, I like you and you like me, but that might not mean that you're going to be brilliant at the job. But at least I'll know if you've got some skills gaps or some weaknesses, shall we say, I need to fill them. I know how to manage you. I know how to get the best out of you, because we'll start with your strengths. And that for me is what assessment essentially gives you. And the platform that we built, Phoenix 51, is about using them insights and using that data to not only your advantage as the hiring company, but to the candidate as well, to the employee, because they get development out of it. And I can't tell you how many conversations we've probably all had, all of the listeners of your brilliant podcast, and now thinking, yeah, I've had these conversations whereby you've said, oh, so I'm going to leave now. Well, why not? Because I haven't got enough development. And you're losing good people because of that. And it's actually, there is a simple fix to that. It's identifying what that is and making sure that you're not waiting for your employees to ask you, you're providing it to them before they need to ask. And they won't go. Sometimes somebody will go and offer you another $5,000, 10 grand, 50 grand, depending on whichever level you're at. Sometimes it's not about the money. Most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's about knowledge and information and learning and development. And I think that that's a key way of attracting people to your organization. If you're known for that in the market, people will come. But build it, they will come. I think
that's the one. It's very tailored as well. Just listening to you there, it's a very tailored individual thing. And I think what's a big driver for people at the moment is to feel like they can have an individual experience with an employer. So it's not cookie cutter. It's not just a battery hen farm, right? Which I dare say a lot of the sales floors that you and I might have walked onto 20 years ago were like battery hen farms, right? It was literally, it was comply or die. Everyone did 8 to 8. We all did the same processes. We all did the same things. Hey, everybody. Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but I wanted to tell you very quickly about how Executive Career Jump can help end your career misery. So when you hit our website, there's 3 different ways that our digital resources can help you. For a start, if you're looking to jump in to a new role, we've got the premier online job search course that you're going to find anywhere. There's a number of different memberships to help you understand what you want and how to go and get it in this current environment. So we're here to help you if you want a new career. We've also got a section if you want to jump up in your career. And so this is all about our online leadership hub, which is a platform full of content, includes 2 meetups per quarter and a whole thriving community of leaders trying to become the best leaders they can be. Go and check that out too. And the third area in our website and the other digital course that might help you is our business launcher course. So we've created the business launcher program that we wish we had when we were setting up on their own. So if you've decided to jump off of the employment stream and start up on your own, make sure you head over and check that out too. You can find all of these resources, a bunch of free content, links to previous podcasts and more at execcareerjump.com. That's execcareerjump.com. Now, back to the pod. Yeah, I think now what employees are looking for is a more tailored experience. Some people that will be 5 days in the office, some will be hybrid, some will be remote, some it will be that they work in a more flexible way. But either way, they're going to want tailored input into their career, and they almost feel like they're selecting who's going to nurture them in the best way to do that. So this is good.
I think you're spot on. And I think that's where it's really tricky for people who are hiring. I mean, we're hiring at the moment as well, right? Like everyone else is, and I think that's where it's really tricky because, you have to change and transform. And I think a lot of businesses have said, right, when COVID first hit, let's be brutally honest about it, it hit everybody by surprise. Everyone was like, whoa, what are we going to do here? Huge amounts of flex and transformation and change really quickly, almost overnight, in lots and lots of different businesses. Some people decided to that they couldn't change or flex, and they decided to unfortunately fold or whatever it might be. Some businesses, stayed afloat. Some businesses embraced it and said, oh, this is an opportunity for us to reset. This is an opportunity for us to change and grow in a different way. way. So whatever your circumstance has been, the common theme has been, wow, it's had to make us do something different. And I think that's been a really big learning piece. And I think that on the point of flexible working, we've all gone from most of the time people being in the office. I mean, flexible working, of course, was around before COVID, but absolutely is it around during COVID. And obviously now everybody got told you can't go in the office. So all of a sudden we're now in everybody's homes. So we just had a conversation, didn't we, before about your flowers and my picture. This wouldn't happen if we pre-COVID, right? It just wouldn't have happened. We'd have either been in the office virtually or we'd have been in the office. And this is my home office and this is the way I shoot, but you are in my home. At any one time, my dog could walk in and all of a sudden you go, oh, the dog. And how many times have we heard that, during the last 18 months or so? Or somebody at the door, whatever it might be. I think the point I'm making is that we've now almost made it personal because we've allowed our clients, our people, our candidates or whatever to come into our homes. So then now to kind of just cut all that back off and go back into a, 8 to 8, boiler house environment, whatever it seems there needs to be some flex. So this has caused, I think, the market and actually potential employers a problem because you've now got to decide, do we keep our office space completely? Do we now have a flexible office space? Do we enable people to come in and out when they need to? Has that changed our culture? Has our environment changed completely? So the people we had before, does Andrew function better in the office or out of the office? And now it is an individual piece. So if it's individually like that, you need data and insights individually, don't you? Like rather than just as a whole. So there has been a knock-on effect for that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is trying to not please everybody, to try and have a culture or an environment that enables everybody to thrive. And let's be honest, if the culture and environment has changed so much from what it was 3 years ago, maybe you need to start changing some of your people as well. And that's the tough decision to make, isn't it?
It's a really tough decision because a different type of leadership's required.
For sure.
For a start. I've got to ask, you said you go through your own hiring at the moment, which is always an interesting topic to talk to recruitment business owners or founders and particularly assessment experts about. So Lee McQueen, the assessment expert, what attributes do you look for in the people you're interviewing?
So we look for socially, I don't know the word I'm looking for, like people that are people. So people that engage, they're socially engaged. We look for people that have the same cultures and values as ourselves, which is keeping things simple, not trying to overcomplicate key things. We want people that work hard. I don't think I've ever met a successful individual that hasn't worked hard. No, I think that is a common theme for everything. So the question really is about how do we identify whether or not they're working hard? Yes, you can see what their backgrounds are. You can see what their parents have done. You can see the background that they've actually come from. Have they had everything on a plate handed to them, or have they had to work certain things? And I'm a big believer in looking at people's backgrounds to understand, how they've overcome certain things. Degree or no degree. I think there's the argument there as well about if you've had a degree, you've shown a high level of academic achievement. You've also, been away, maybe traveling, that type of stuff. That different kind of social environments that will enable you to flourish in the work environment in Phoenix 51 or in more talent. So it's them types of things. Then behaviours that we look for are how you handle certain situations around communication, around commercial awareness. I think is really, really important. Teamwork and that environment of working to be successful as an individual, but doing it as part of the team. So actually, if you win, we all win type scenario, rather than it's all about Andrew, it's all about Lee. Does that make sense? So the key kind of drivers for us are them that the core values of somebody that wants to work hard, that keeps things simple, not overcomplicate stuff, and actually enables that communication, that commercial awareness, and that ability to work in a team are the core values of our business. So anything, of course, on top of that, you would then layer what that specific role is. So obviously, if I'm recruiting for a finance director, I'm going to be looking for certain different behaviors or certain different attributes than if I was looking for a sales manager or an SDR. So, but fundamentally, the core values are in everybody that comes to work for the organization. And the tough thing is, Andrew, and we find it tough with me kind of standing on my pedestal, as it were. The tough thing is you find somebody that you think could be really, really good, but they don't hit one or two or three of them core values, and then you go and hire them anyway. And that's where the problems start, is because you kind of already know they're not going to work, but you give them a shot anyway. And look, sometimes there's anomalies to that. Of course there is, but majority of the time, you'll be rinsing and repeating that process in 6 months if that's what happens.
Oh, we've all been there, haven't we? Bums on seats.
For sure.
Totally. Yeah, we've all done it.
And again, especially with, and it's not just, pigeonholing, but especially with when you've got your investors or you've got your shareholders, you've got a board, you've got people that are saying, we need to get to this point. Sometimes rationale goes out the window. Sometimes, actually, this is our process and this is what we should be doing. But because of bums on seats type scenario, you cast that to one side and you go with, all right, let's just get these people in. And in the end, you're going to be paying for that. In the end, you will be paying for that.
I really like the fact that you mentioned the team element. My view of sales in particular is that it is evolving to be more of a team sport rather than an individual sport. And I think the best teams compete ferociously externally in the market, but are very together internally. And I think the worst teams compete internally all the time and fight against each other and are pretty weak in the market. So I love that idea of managing the individual driver versus the team driver in a sales team. I think that's going to be key to the people that are going to win over the next 10 years for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point, Andrew. And again, if you think, I love a sports analogy, so if you have to forgive me, but if you think about team sport, even F1, so people will look at F1. If anyone is interested in F1, I really love it. But people say, right, Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, for example, individual. But it's probably one of the biggest team sports that is out there. And a lot of people, they just see the drive and go, yeah, okay, he's got a good car, that's him going. The amount of strategy and teamwork and elements of everyone pulling together to get to that point is absolutely off a scale. So if one or two of them go rogue, should we say, or one or two of them are not working in that team environment, it ends up being that, because it's so fine margins in all sports, especially F1, but it ends up being that Max wins the race and not Lewis. And that might not come down to Lewis's skill or Max's skill as a car driver. That might come down to one of the engineers that didn't do something right, back in the factory 2 weeks ago. And that's why it's such an intense team sport. And I think that's the same, if I can use that outlook from a business perspective as well. I think the minute that you don't trust somebody or you don't have a trust for somebody, I think that's the key element in a team is to, do we trust these people to do not what they're meant to be doing, but actually to hit the business objectives that we've got? And that's what we should be hiring based on.
I love that. Character is good. Switching lanes then quick. A couple of quick fire ones if I can, while we've got you here today. Owning your own business. So we've seen a lot of people during the pandemic kind of decide to set up on their own. I think it's been one of the positives, but there's a number of layers to this, isn't there? I wonder what your point of view is in terms of the pros and cons of business ownership.
Yeah, well, I mean, setting up a business in a global pandemic, which is what we did with Phoenix 51, is a massive challenge. You have to be bold. And again, I don't mind sharing a story with you and the listeners, is that myself and my business partner, we were working in raw talent. And I said to you off air, when COVID hit, the recruitment business was, it's a perm only business. So for anybody that knows that, it's, you're only as good as your last month. So the reality of the situation is that we were doing pretty well, but COVID hit and it was game over, 90% of the revenue gone. And we could have decided to cry in our porridge, if you like, and say, oh, that's it, game over. We can't get the tech business going and whatever. But we didn't. We decided to push on, change, transform, use this as a reset button and crack on. And we launched last year in September. So it is a challenge, but I think, and there is an element of risk to doing that. But I think if you can see that where the market's going and where it might, where it's changing, where it's actually going to end up, and you can actually fulfill the pain that your potential clients and obviously your clients are feeling, there's hardly any risk to that. As long as you've got the business idea and you can execute. I think 10 years ago when I set up Raw Talent, I was coming out of a situation where I was nervous because I always wanted to set my company up. And, I was 30 years old or whatever at the time. And so, I was relatively, I wouldn't say late, but I'd been thinking about setting up a business for a couple of years, hence why I went on the Apprentice in the first place. And it gave me the courage and confidence to go and set up. And my wife and I had our first baby at the same, Millie was born in August, and I set up the business about 3 months later. So it's kind of like everything was going on at the same time. And you're thinking you're giving up a guaranteed salary and all of the horrible things that you're thinking about. But generally, it was the best thing I ever did. I don't remember. I now work, my boss is my clients, right? My boss, I've got some investors now in the tech business, but my boss is ultimately our clients. And that's it. Like, I don't have a boss. I don't have a political ladder to climb in the corporate and that type of stuff. And I do miss elements of that. I think, you definitely do miss elements of that business of climbing up that ladder. But, and let me tell you, cash flow and cash as a small business owner or a business owner, certainly when you first start, that definitely keeps you up at night. And I think I've definitely got more grey hairs now than I ever have from setting up the business. But it's definitely been a very, very positive experience. And I think it's always a work in progress with me, but if we get to where we want to be in the next few years with the technology business, the whole journey that I look back on will just be very, very rewarding. And it's been brilliant to run your own company.
Love it. Yeah. And thanks for being so open about that, because I think the stresses are a reality, and often entrepreneurialism is glamorized, right? Via social media, all these founders crushing it. And
they're always crushing it.
Yeah. And I think that's half the story. And, I've enjoyed the process for sure, and I wish I'd have done it sooner, but there is a load of stuff that goes behind it. So do you think anybody can set up their own business, or do you think you have to have certain traits?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I think I don't actually. I think that somebody that's been in a corporate world and navigated the corporate world really, really well, and they might end up being, real top executive in a global corporate, doesn't necessarily have, I'm not saying they don't have it, by the way, I'm just saying that doesn't necessarily have the guile and the skill set to set up a business and drive it from scratch. It is very different. It's very different working in a corporate, and I can make this comparison because I've done both, right? So working in a corporate where you've got a budget per year, and actually you can hire somebody, make a mistake, and actually you lose the budget somewhere in a spreadsheet that goes up to the board, is very different than hiring somebody in your own business, paying them out of your bank basically, and then making a mistake and wasting the money. It's a very different feeling, very, very different feeling. So, you tend to start making decisions. I would say when you first start your business up, you're scattergun. So you're basically out there and you're finding business from wherever it is. And you're like, hi, you're getting on, and you're bringing people. And that's probably how most businesses start. And all of a sudden you become not overwhelmed, but you go, wow, this is going amazing. Like, I can't believe how much business I've got. When you grow to kind of 2 years or 3 years, you kind of come into a situation where you're going, right, okay, I've got to grow this business up a little bit now. It's got a bit. I've got some staff working for me, and I've got some clients working for me, but I've got to start getting some processes in place, some HR processes, some systems in place. That starts to grow the business up, and then your mindset starts to change from them early days of, right, let's just go out, get the business. Now you're going into a targeted approach, and you're bringing different customers in, and they're expecting different things from you. That's your growth set. I suppose it's like, baby, adolescent, teenager, adult, and that's your journey. So I think for anybody that's setting up their business, today in year one, you are probably going to expect not to take huge amounts of salary. Depends on how you set it up. If you want to grow your business really quickly, you have to bring people in that are going to eat your profit. And that means that you don't get paid. And that's really difficult. You might have been earning 200 grand a year before in your corporate, and now all of a sudden you're not. So it's a very, very different mindset from there. And I think you do get a bit more carte blanche with the mistakes that you can make, obviously, because, they're your decisions. But I think you need a coach, definitely. I think you need advisors, people that have been there and done it, and to try and help you. Depends what your outcome is. Where do you want to get the business to be? And I think with Raw Talent, I always wanted to get to the business to be a voice. I think that was my mission. Is I wanted the business to be a voice, so people would hear this is a different way of recruiting, and obviously make money along the way and that type of stuff. With Phoenix, it is all about building out a SaaS model and an MRR, what we're going to increase and make sure that we're changing our customers' way of using technology for recruitment and ultimately digital assessment.
Oh, it's really exciting. So how do you make sure that you can zone out sometimes and you're not 24/7 in your head about all these business things? How do you deal with that?
I actually think that's one of the hardest things to do. I think that in 10 years of setting obviously Raw Talent up and Phoenix up as well, over that 10-year entrepreneurial journey, should we say, I think that's been the hardest thing to do. And here's the thing, when you're in a corporate, you don't really you might get given, I don't know, 25 days holiday a year, but let's be honest, how many of you take it? If you're in that top echelon, you're probably taking half of that if you're lucky, and you're only really taking probably 7 to 10 days worth of holiday at a time. I don't think between me and my wife during our 20s, when we were climbing the career, if you like, I don't think we ever had a longer holiday than 7 days. It just wasn't there. I'm not saying that's the right thing, by the way, but I'm just saying it wasn't there. As a business owner, you can take as much holiday as you like. You can do whatever you want. You can go off for a month tomorrow if you want, but the consequences of you doing that are obvious, right? So where's your clients? Where's your business? Where are you bringing your money in? So that is a very different key piece from that side of things. So I think for me, the last 10 years have been a learning journey, and I'm still learning. To set up a SaaS business last year, I didn't know, if I'm honest, I didn't really know much about SaaS. I mean, I've learned so much speaking to so many amazing people and having advisors, investors who we've got into the business now. We're just we're closing out our second round of investment, so seed round. So, and I didn't know the first thing about investment either. I've never raised a penny in my life, right? I've sold stuff, yes, but never raised. Now we're raising on our second time. So I think it's been a huge learning curve and learning journey. And I think if you've got the desire to learn, to get better, and to want to do new things and step outside your comfort zone, I think it's probably a journey that you'd like to go on.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. I think that's fantastic. Final question before we wrap then. What are you most excited about at the moment?
Well, I'm excited about the international break because Tottenham got a win before the international break. I'm excited that we got 3 points. No, I mean, all jokes aside, the journey that we've created now and the way the market is very, very challenging now for organizations that operate in the recruitment tech space or the recruitment space itself because of the supply and demand scenario that we were talking about off air before. But what I'm most looking forward to is getting the business, the Phoenix 51 business, to where it needs to be and making sure that our clients are delivered the right service. It is tough. There's no doubt about it. Some of the stuff, the techniques that we were doing before as a recruitment company, More Talent, have had to have changed very, very quickly because of the market's changed. And that would be my advice to anyone watching this from a recruitment perspective is, wow, we need to change, we need to transform and do something different. But with that challenge comes great reward and great outcome. And actually, if we can deliver to our customers what, in a real tough scenario, what they really need and what they want for their business, that's what excites me. That's what makes me. Solving customer problems is what I got into business for. It's not necessarily just recruitment or just tech or something. It is, and it isn't. The money is almost a byproduct for that. Look, we're not a non-for-profit company. We are to make money. We want to make money, and that's absolutely, I'm not shy about that. But that is a byproduct if you provide the right solution or solve the problem for your client. And that is the most important. So if we can start driving down our customers' attrition, if we can start improving their year one retention rates, which we've seen improvements from 45-60% all the way through to 86% utilizing the platform. If we can start to do that, ultimately we're hitting some of their board goals, and that means we're solving some of their problems. And that's what we thrive on, basically, Andrew.
I love it. And it comes across in everything you say. And it's been really good to spend the time today and to meet you in person. I've been watching from afar as Raw Talent has built up, and it's been great to spend that time. And I think your mix of authenticity, honesty, nous and passion, I think will serve you in really good stead in the SaaS world as well. So best of luck.
I hope so.
For anyone that needs some McQueen Nurofen for their talent headaches at the moment and their pain points, where should they go to find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Loads of McQueen Nurofen on tap, actually.
Yeah, that's it.
You can simply look me up on LinkedIn, Lee at phoenix51.io, or the website is obviously www.phoenix51.io. Raw Talent as well, so rawtalentacademy.com. They're the two main businesses, but you can get me on LinkedIn. Look, I'm always open to having conversations because I think that with conversation comes more opportunity and more ways of solving problems. And that's what we're all about. So yeah, I'd be delighted if anyone wants to get in touch. That'd be fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, don't be afraid to reach out to Lee. I'm more optimistic about Phoenix 51 than I am Tottenham. I've got to be honest on that. But
me too, by the way, me too.
But I wish you all the best on all fronts, mate. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Thank you, Andrew. All the best. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
You've been listening to the Career Jump Podcast with Andrew MacAskill. For more resources and information, just head over to the Career Jump website at www.execcareerjump.com to supercharge your job search and start making moves. Let's get to work.